Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood Was Armageddon. Mud Flood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they are willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I'm saying good morning on February 26th. This is a leap year. There will be 29 days this month for those of you who are waiting on the first to get your paycheck. But, a lot of people are old. Like me, I'm kind of waiting on brother Randy to see if he pops in. He's always busy in the morning getting, his people to school and just doing a lot of things. So I'm going to just wait on him and show some pictures in the meantime because we've got a lot to cover. I don't even know if I'm going to get to just the tabs I have open. Filiam, ¿qué pasa? Buenos días. Muchas gracias. Here's a Bible verse we're going to start out with. Revelation 14:13. Let's pay special attention to this part. Because you're saved by grace, but doggone it, your deeds are going to follow you. And there's a lot of things where God has, before the foundation of the earth, had good works for his name for the people that he saves by grace to do. And he's going to, the parables explain it. There's people who have talents and they're supposed to do what they do best and they've been gifted to do. And I heard a voice from heaven telling me, right, blessed are the dead, those who die in the Lord from this moment on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labors, for their deeds will follow them. They will rest from their labors. This is, we've entered into our spiritual rest, but not our eternal rest. So this is all the pictures. Check it out. Look at this. They're still wondering, evolutionists, they're striving. I guess this guy took an hour and a half to try to say, with all the other, like so many crickets and butterflies, how come there's only one species of human? Well, deal with it. That's what the Father wants. Hey, this LiDAR, it's kind of like they can't lie anymore. And this is something that finally, the first time I saw something proved with LiDAR was in a movie called The Last Days of Waco or something about Waco. And they used LiDAR to prove that, the FBI and the BATF were lying about so much. So, and it's the gift that's kept giving. Just amazing. This is about a 260-day calendar. So much is coming out. I guess they want you to focus on these U-shaped, kind of big. These are hoodoos in Bryce Canyon. One of the first things I saw that I just was blown away as, I think I must have been between 6 and 10 years old. And I just couldn't believe it. This is in Malta. I have a few tabs about Malta pulled up. Now, unusual to say the least. Thought you might want to see that one. A little bit of weirdness going on over here. Yeah, that's weird too, but they can fix it. I think they just get a little Roman concrete here or something and they just make it level and make it last. That was their goal. Here's that picture of Malta. we'll get to that because we're going to be looking at some tunnels because they're absolutely, you know, I don't think we could do it today. Look at those windmills right here, too. This thing could be like an eyeball city, too. I'm going to have to check that out. There is the center mark. Could be laid out like an eyeball. I looked at some city plans. This is like Pennsylvania, what it was going to be like. And this is a river. And look at when you have a tributary coming off a river and they're showing, oh, here, this is probably where they raise fish because I've seen them in other pictures of how they do that. And anyway, it would maximize the water to more area for either fishery or just smaller farms, giving it more. St. Petersburg, is that what this is? Yep. Unusual. Is this supposed to be a king looking in a mirror or a god looking in a mirror and seeing Peter the Great? That's kind of weird. Who knows what's going on here? That looks like a star fort. It has those, look at that eye. How did it change? The date on it was what I wanted you to see. Right here. Just another one of those weird ones. And of course, star fortage everywhere. They say this is a plan, and it sure it was. There's another 1704. Got a few. Oh, got that one twice, I guess. Thought this one was interesting because it did have this kind of cool thing over here. And here's, I guess they're going to redo this building. So they put looks like they blew up the plan and said, yeah, we want to make it look like this. And I can, so at least they know what they're copying it from. A plan, but they didn't even have it filled in like, oh, and we're going to put this on it. They just put up the plan before they had decided what they're going to name it. Seemed interesting. And this is kind of cool too. Yeah, we're going to get looking at some things in Venice. Just found it. This guy carrying the ladder seems contrived. But besides that, I guess, I guess it could be Photoshop. The curtains interested me, especially over here on this side, almost as if they were made for it. Way to click away. So the curtains. Found a grave underneath there. You see where we just were in this plaza? They just found graves underneath it that they claim are thousands of years old, and they didn't know it. And it's like they're 3 or 4 feet under the ground. Nobody's ever repaired this whole thing in front of the, what is it, St. Mark Square? That's the body. Stalin's brutal death. Thought this was an interesting picture, big round thing here. Now this is how governments use and design propaganda. And wasn't I on a big kick about how the Guggenheims and everybody propped these people up, starting getting the money in the 1893 silver crash, which was manipulated? It always happens. I got this queued up. We might as well play it. Oh, that's a screenshot. I got it queued up at this spot. And it's just another reason to say, you know, I guess the ego thing is because if you guys can prove that RJ and I have not done the majority of the heavy lifting on all the golden age past theology from the beginning, instead of, as we'll see in some of the videos, like, well, it's a new idea and we don't know where it came from. Well, we do, and we have the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. How does propaganda change our beliefs? That looks like 10:45 would be a good time. But again, at a certain time in the 1920s with the Edvard Bernays, he got women to smoke cigarettes and wear green, and they had us all figured out because an ancient prejudice has been removed. Women can smoke in public, and pretty soon they're going to be doing a lot more in public. This just seemed kind of weird. Nationalism. Look at what was going on around that same time in the 1920s when everybody was having their nations fully formed in nationalism. Think of the United States and China as examples of extreme nationalism. And what were they saying in Brazil at the time? Children, these honkies, not like a lot of Brazilian, but they were focusing on these Brazilians. Learning at home and in school, the cult of the fatherland, you will bring all chances of success to life. Only love builds, and strongly loving Brazil, you will lead it to the greatest of destinies among nations, fulfilling the desires of exaltation nestled in every Brazilian's heart. So you can trust the president of that time to know that in the heart of this young lady and this young man is nestled. They want to be exalted, desires of exaltation for Brazil. Get to work, young man. Hey, what a surprise. They knew about this back in the day. And this is, it's like capitalism. Oh, so this is a poster for communism. Maybe? Yeah, it probably has to be. But again, you know, this is propaganda. We studied some propaganda. It's always something you're going to need because you could reverse this and say communism, has, all the workers at the bottom. And then, well, some people have to distribute the food. Let's see who does that. Some people are going to be in charge of keeping these people from these people. You got to have some sort of and the wide road is full of fake religions. And what are you going to do? Share the money, trickle it down, down, doobie doo, down, down. They've got you in a coma, down, doobie doo, down. Hey, that's people farting at the Pope. Hey, that's the thumbnail. Hey, that was commissioned by Martin Luther. And they said, well, he really wasn't that mad at Rome. He was only trying to gently nudge them towards, a few changes. No, I'm afraid it runs much deeper when you're dealing with heretical scumbags who will draw and quarter people for disagreeing with them on one God or not. They'll want there to be a trinity, doggone it, and they'll kill you and burn you if you don't. Here's how people dressed in the Bible. This is how people dressed in the Dark Ages. It was like they all had their own specific job and dress code. You know it. You know it's true. And remember the Huguenots who were the, persecuted Well, this is how they dressed before the Catholics started burning them alive and making them run for the hills. They were just another group of people. Oh, yeah, that's how they die when the Catholics kill them, I guess. Fonts. You are not going to believe we're looking at fonts. I know it, but it's crazy. It's all the part of the reset. The 1711 loosing of Satan. So this is a book. Oh, I didn't have that. Any cutouts of the font? That's too bad. You're going to like that. Randy, are you still taking the kids? Hey, everybody. Hi. Hey. Hola. Is that Ella Rose? How are you? Hello, Marcella. Luther. Que paso? Hey, I got a picture of a real hard roof or something coming up that's a tiled roof. I don't know if you saw it in that picture, but I was thinking about you. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, the Lord has comforted me last night to know that my works are going to follow me. So whoever, you know, if they don't believe they're the seed they're going to be, I get it. I would have liked to, I didn't ask for this. I would have chose somebody that's a lot more presentable, maybe somebody that's, like, what's your resume? Oh, I was a great basketball coach and a warehouse manager. Well, really? Oh, okay. And now you're claiming to be a medicine man and whatever. Wait till you see this thing about the font. I really feel like I should jump forward. I just kept this open from the other day. Same with that. We're in a timeline. I wish Jason Jack would, you know, he's trying hard. I don't think he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think he's just confused, but I don't know how he came up with his 1776 thing. 10 seconds, maybe a little more.
Was truly a glorious period of time. This was a time that the Dark Ages say were a period of darkness, a period of illness and plagues, and there wasn't much human innovation during that time when, in all actuality, it was the opposite. The bubonic plague, the history books say occurred during this time. I think that those type of events that you see described within the Dark Ages are actually what happened at the time prior to the destruction of Rome, the fall of Rome, when God's wrath was poured out on the beast kingdom. For instance, the bubonic plague.
Okay, wow. So anyway, he's got this, at least he's trying.
System and everything that went along with it. This was an end of an era, and this was prophesied by the prophets through hundreds of years to the children of Israel, forewarning them of a time to come. If they
So we'll see. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this. And again, I have too many things to dwell on right now. I don't think I got this far. What is this?
With bombs, explosives, dynamites during wars. And this has been happening.
Well, so anyway, I got no problem. We'll,
have a new flavor. This is partial preterism as well. So it doesn't believe that all of prophecy has been fulfilled yet. It's partially been fulfilled. We still have the little season to go through yet, and the final great white throne judgment. There are full preterists out there which believe it's all done, and we're living in the new heaven and earth.
All right. You see, now here's what I'm trying to get is that if he's not a shill and he really is a polymath for an art graduate student that can be, he has to understand. He's explaining to this guy who's trying to learn about the most important new systematic theology, premillennialism. And this guy he's ready to listen and learn. He doesn't know. Paul doesn't know what preterism is. So he can't tell him the difference between preterism and premillennialism, which is the new theology the Lord showed me that, no, the millennium's over. And it's been almost 10 years now. And people hear about it. We've done the heavy lifting, RJ and I, and some others have helped along the way. But the Lord will show their deeds. He's describing it
that if we
wrong.
believe with our hearts and we confess with our mouth that Christ is Lord,
Yes.
we'll be saved too. And I think that's regardless of either side of this. If you're pro-Tartarian, I don't know if it has an official title to this theory. I'm sure there's a common title to it. But if you're pro or against, and you're going to research it either way, what matters is that
the common title should be premillennialism, but since most people don't want a strict Bible-only 66 books solo by faith, solo by scripture, solo by Jesus alone, and maybe women should wear bonnets and act like, hey, I don't promote Jezebelism. Yeah, that keeps me down, but it's premillennialism. And Paul, you need to know what preterism is.
That we've given our hearts and our life to the Lord, so we'll be there for it on the right side if it's come or if He hasn't. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me here. What is the name of this theory?
Well, there's you can call it the Little Season theory. You could call it the Millennial Kingdom theory. That's a popular one. You could call it the Millennial Reign theory. There's no actual specific name. Some people believe, this idea that the Millennial Kingdom has already come is not new. It's actually very old. It's called preterism.
Wrong, 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 wrong. And hopefully we'll get time to that today, if not, Lord willing, tomorrow. But if you have to do your own due diligence, please do it. That's wrong. That is not. Preterism believes that right now we are working to change the world so that it comes under the rule of Jesus Christ, and it will remain under the rule of Jesus Christ for a long time. And then He'll return. That's not premillennialism. That's not, hey, look, Armageddon already happened, and so did the 1,000 years. Bump, I hope you're listening to Bump Podcast, man. Love for you to talk to RJ and myself. We'll come back to this. I'm not closing it.
So when I suddenly randomly in the middle of the day for no reason was flooded and back into perceiving that realm, I knew exactly where it was. And I was like, why am I in the DMT realm? And I looked up and I realized I was stood in front of a giant. And it was an enormous black and white fractaled patterned jester with wide purple lips, huge glowing eyes, and this skull shaped like spider's legs. It wasn't wearing a jester's hat. It was shaped like one, but its skull was simply shaped like that. It was a terrifying thing.
Okay. Now, you've all heard my descriptions of when I do mushrooms. Is it anything weird like that? Well, I'd like to hear that part, because I am holding them out to say, look, let's get together. I've made videos, Glift, about that. I think it's a fool's errand that will never happen. That will be a good chance for Theron to settle down, slow down, be taught premillennialism and the various aspects of it, and realize there's nothing that teaches there's a north up there. Not in any way, shape, or form. So I got a problem with,
And it was an enormous
I got a problem with Paul still, and I'm going to be very, very, protective. Look, even the preterists themselves don't know how to explain Revelation 20. They have so much infighting about, not just between hyper preterism, partial preterism. And remember, preterism was invented by Jesuits to counter Martin Luther and John Calvin's Reformation. That's where preterism came from. It came from a desire to prove, no, the Antichrist is not the Pope. The Pope is not an Antichrist. We're doing it right. So 40 years one just seems weird.
Ministry, and ends, verse 10, with the destruction of the Messiah's enemies in the Roman Jewish war and the salvation of the believing remnant. This spans approximately 40 years, AD 30 to 70. John alerts us.
So that is what some preterists are teaching was the millennium, which is why, I guess they have knuckleheads who are just trying to say, I've learned something and I need hits. Let's start a channel, or let's change our topic.
Are people who hold to a position, this position, who watch this YouTube channel, and appreciate them watching. And I hope that we can have a conversation with one another that's respectful and not unnecessarily rude. I don't question the motives or the integrity of people who.
I have begun. You see, because when I was studying, and I was a believer in preterism because the Lord had not had me ready, or his timing was not so that I would have my second vision yet. And it was all we had. This is what we had, Theron. This is what we had, Paul. We had a wall of books, and we studied day and night the book of Revelation and the Bible. We didn't dig in on somebody else's work and say, I'm taking it to the North Pole, because the rapture people believe that there's something going on in the North. And Jules Verne thought there was something going on in the North. And the earth is flat, so we've been lied to, and I'm going to the North Pole. You haven't put in the time and effort this man has. And I hope he opens up his eyes. I don't even know where I'm, let's see what he thinks the devil is.
It's obvious in the New Testament. So if you don't recall, in Revelation chapter 20, the devil is bound at the beginning of the 1,000 years and loosed at the end of the 1,000 years. So he's bound for a 1,000-year period. I think the problem with taking the millennial period as starting at Jesus's ministry and ending in the year 70 is that we have from the New Testament itself that the devil is active and very involved through that 40-year period. So even so you might say, well, that's symbolic too.
Right. Dude, you can tell them whatever you want. They don't care. They're there to cause animosity, disruption, tickle itchy ears. The only thing we have is that we can look and see that of what Paul, the Apostle Paul, I guess you could say he didn't understand, was they weren't going to come back. There was the great falling away in 2 Timothy chapter 1:15, all of Asia departed him. And when it went bad, he kept striving, hoping his labor wasn't in vain, and his deeds followed him, and it wasn't. But in millennialism, as you can see, they're waiting. Post-millennialism, which is preterism, they're waiting on the millennium and then the second judgment. But they think that there's an indeterminate amount of time. And then you also let them, have heard them many times that they don't even think it's an actual 1,000 years, even though the Greek word chilia, Chilia, means 10 times 10 times 10. And amillennialism, they just believe it's a symbolic millennium. Postmillennialism is preterism. It is in Christian eschatology is an interpretation of chapter 20 of the book of Revelation, which sees Christ's second coming as occurring after the millennium, a golden age in which Christian ethics prosper. Now, this is symbolic. They don't believe Jesus Christ is going to be reigning on a throne while he establishes his kingdom on earth through his preaching and redemptive work of the people that spread out from the first century. I guess they say he equips his church with the gospel, empowers the church by his spirit, and changes the church with the Great Commission. Disciple all of the nations. And then after the gospel is preached to every creature under heaven, they don't repent. There is a remnant that is the blessed and the mark of the beast and the two witnesses, and everything happens. And then Satan is put in the pit so that he cannot deceive the nations any longer. They are still ruled with a rod of iron. So took the social gospel for a while, but in the long run, it was taken over in the 1970s and 80s by, Dr. Lindstrom, but with the help from the John Birch Society, and he didn't know that they were being helped by it. But again, postmillennialism is when postmillennialists adopted some form of preterism. So this isn't something that I'm making up or just, came to it. I remember Andrew when he got out of college, and my wife was shocked that his daughter had such thick cradle cap, and I kind of was too. But it's the same thing. I know these people. I've read these people. Lorraine Bettner's one of my favorites. I've had dinner with R.J. Rushdoony and got to, we all got to choose questions to ask him. Do I have an ego? No, I guess we all do. But if I told you half the things I've done, you'd think I was bragging. So here's that video I showed you the picture of. Hey, I've got to take this phone call.
Jackson Pollock, and there is some truth to that. The Tate Gallery was unable to fund exhibitions of these avant-garde artworks, but Julius Fleischmann is an American millionaire, and he stepped in. He was the president of the Farfield Foundation, which funded the art exhibit and showed it all through Europe. That foundation had financial links to none other than the U.S. Central Intelligence Bureau. While the U.S. government didn't directly sign the checks, their fingerprints were all over the operation. And the Museum of Modern Art in New York was in on it too, showcasing abstract expressionism in exhibitions that toured globally. So why would the State Department and Central Intelligence Bureau of the United States care about modern art? Honestly, the government bureaucrats probably didn't understand the art at all. They probably just saw it as a way to advance their political agenda. Abstract expressionism didn't follow typical conventions or rules of painting. It was the perfect symbol of American individualist values. It was about freedom and creativity. Now,
all right, so this video, this guy just was blowing me away. This is the font I wanted you to hear about. And that phone call was from RJ, the famous Randy from Wisconsin. and he will be joining us shortly.
Governments and monarchies recognized the power of the printed word, and they began commissioning unique fonts. Check this one out. This is way more than just a set of letters. It's called the King's Roman font, and it was commissioned by French King Louis XIV. It took over 50 years to complete. So you might be wondering, why would it take so long? First off, rather than taking roots in calligraphy or writing...
Are you seeing this? Every little swooping part of their font is a geometrical symbol. I don't believe that king did this. This is outrageous. Hey, welcome, big brother. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good morning. I have about a half an hour here before I need to take off and do what I'm committed to do here today.
All right, well, make yourself useful, big brother, and answer this question.
What's this?
What do we call someone like Ella who thinks that we are, or who think we are in the millennial reign still? Or we this is kind of we got to come up with names.
Well, no, I just, it's a more of a condition, isn't it? Deceived?
I don't know. Hey, I really, though, if you only have a half hour, I got to get you up to speed on what I was just looking at. All right.
Well, like I say, the reason I called is I just finished, and then I clicked on another video, then I clicked on the one you sent me. So, I mean, I don't know why.
I can't, towards the end of this, I might as well, towards the very end of this, if I had time, I was going to get into the whole, how come you can't clear your entire queue? Well, the feature for deleting your entire queue is not available. It's going to keep forcing videos on you because the idea was, I guess, that they just wanted it to have, you have the constant experience of always being interacted from YouTube. So that was a kind of a thing that we were going to go to on that.
Why it works how it works?
Yeah. Hey, look at Len sent me another email. He's got a weird brick going on here. He wanted me to see it.
Yeah.
That is kind of weird, huh? What
Yeah.
What he wants me to tell him what happened, and I'm just saying, like, he got burned, man.
Is that part of when it was the production process of the brick, and then something went awry, and
he's out there. He's out he goes out looking for him and stuff.
Yeah, he found a nice one.
He sure did. We got the millennial reign we looked at, post-millennialism. I wanted to show this. You need to see this.
Even fonts play a major role in propaganda, going back hundreds of years. Governments and monarchies recognized the power of the printed word, and they began commissioning unique fonts. Check this one out. This is way more than just a set of letters. It's called the King's Roman font, and it was commissioned by French King Louis XIV. It took over 50 years to complete. So you might be wondering, why would it take so long? First off, rather than taking roots in calligraphy or writing by hand, this was one of the first typefaces that used a hyper-rational mathematical grid system to...
Hey, RJ, it's not just rational. This is hype. If you ever wondered what hyper-rational is, you're looking at it. When I want my font, I want it exactly to follow the, this is kind of
well, yeah, it's done on graph paper, so it's
this is something. How long would that take you when you were studying grafting? How long would it take you to be like, okay, show me all the angles on an A?
Yeah, but then you get into the French curve stuff here on anything that isn't, then on the bottom, how it terminates to the line. Then it's going to be so high from, that
Hyper. Hyper's a good. Wait till you see how
it's
hyper.
over the top.
Yeah, they take it pretty far
developed by
too.
a committee at the French Academy of Sciences.
And this is all a
The
lie,
designer and
everybody.
mastermind behind the typeface, Philippe Grandjean, then
And I
spent
do
the
want
next
to.
couple
Oh,
of
shoot,
decades
I missed it.
hand
I got to go back just a second.
developed by a committee at the French Academy.
Yeah. So in a lot of times when they show us these old pictures and they say, see, they believed in a globe, these are actual terrestrial globes that I think a lot of them were. And then they would compare it to what they knew they were living. Of course, nobody back then was stupid enough to fall for the whole globe tard thing. Yeah, right, Randy?
Well, yeah, I wasn't there as far as a witness, but you would hope that was the case. That it was
Does this
more
look
of
like a terrestrial globe? Or, I might have just shot myself in the foot.
Yeah, it's a painting of a rendition of whatever that's supposed to
Anyway,
represent.
yeah, this is
Someone
the guy here.
On the ladder trying to get a book that was out of reach or what?
I think he's trying to point to the land. He's going, no, Tartaria was over here. And this guy took 50 years because it was worth it to get this font.
The designer and mastermind behind the typeface, Philippe Grandjean, then spent the next couple of decades hand-cutting every single letter for every single font size into metal.
Sure,
That's
he did.
21 different font sizes, both bold and italic. That's 82 different font styles and 4,264 individual letters in both capital and lowercase. And that's not even counting the punctuation marks. Each letter was crafted with the sole purpose of embodying the authority of the French monarchy. The project started in 1692, but Grandjean passed away in 1714 before he could finish his masterpiece.
So I think people can tell that I'm not really, I don't believe their timelines, but that is giving me a complex view of fonts I've never appreciated.
Public opinion with propaganda. Like, he literally wrote the book and it's called Propaganda. Bernays thought that humans were driven by base instincts and animal desires. He felt that the horrors of the world wars were proof of humanity's irrational and dangerous behaviors. His solution to our irrational nature was to harness these base instincts and redirect them towards something less destructive: consumerism.
Yeah, people think Bernays, lived hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I think he lived into, I was a teenager when he died. This is all new, people. He gave us consumerism last couple of minutes of this video, but I would recommend everybody go check it out.
Creating inner desires within people through advertisements and propaganda. Then corporations would sell a product to satisfy that inner desire. Bernays called this method the engineering of consent. Even President Hoover embraced Bernays' plan, and consumerism became central to American life. This entire strategy was to keep people docile and distracted so that society remained stable and aligned with the government's broader agenda. Now, obviously, it didn't always work out.
I like that, docile and distracted.
But it was the key to economic success in America. Bernays believed that the American public was just a herd that could be directed through propaganda. If this sounds like some weird, wacky conspiracy, go ahead, read Bernays' books. He's shockingly open about his plans. Even though American and Russian ideals were completely different from each other, they both used design and art to unify.
Right. And here it gets back into, again, I showed this
minutes. It was less than half the price of the 1909 Model 2. This is the efficiency that would fuel consumerism in everything from cars to toasters to radios. Ford discovered newfound efficiencies in
they've got an explanation for everything, but again, I've got so much.
Yeah, I mean, Ford did some follies also, but he could afford it, so.
Right, and who even knows if that wasn't who even knows when that really was? We've got some hiccups in the timeline of, so this is really, you saw that graphic about the graph paper and the font, and this is all they say about it. Yeah, it was very interesting, and here's a sample of it. Okay. I think people, that study sometimes in Wikipedia that want to learn might be able to go like, look how complicated and crazy this is. And even though it was not, it was, I guess there's tons of where did these get their alphabet? Well, they were constructed, at least in that time. The alphabetum Romanum, how to create Roman square capital letters geometrically based on the subdivision of a square. First published in what they call 1463, because they were a bunch of cavemen back then, man. I'm going to close that one. Interesting topic. You know who developed it or things like it was the Congregation for Evangelization of the People, evangelism. So people might want to study this. It's still active today. They were the ones that commissioned that type of font, I believe. 1622, they say. Still a big deal. Not saying we're doing all the heavy lifting for these people, but the Lord probably would, is going to show someday who's doing all the heavy lifting for this stuff, man. What's going on with that stuff? So here's the building then. You can see it's got multiple levels. Here's the building today, and it looks like, doggone, if they're not missing a whole floor. I think we know where it is. It's under the ground. Hey, Santa. Those people were worshiping I think a Trinity-loving Saint Nicholas who wanted people to do good works or something. Whatever. They were all basing it on decretal laws that I didn't have a link and I didn't know. So they're like, oh, that's just something that the Pope writes when he uses special fonts and formulated his decisions. They used that law that wrote those fonts until 1917. Very interesting. Look at the way I'm flying through this stuff, huh, Randy?
Yeah, you're making a pretty good pace.
Yeah. I'm really upset with peer review. in case people haven't noticed, that's a computer font too. I looked that up. I looked this up because this is that writing fonts. I couldn't get it to show up anything, but then finally I got, something about it that led me, it's like peer review. This guy's doing peer review. Peer review goes back to, well, where's this go to the scholarly history?
So when did it have initiate the italicized and the purpose for it?
Man, I don't know.
I mean, is
That's
that
a good question.
English only, or is that?
I didn't see that as one of the examples of the 80 that they did with the Roman king's rule. But here's the government policies. When did this peer review come from? I think I have some answers. It's this guy. He was the first modern creator of the scientific peer review. He was one of the foremost intelligencers. In case you didn't know, that's an obsolete word for.
Was that some sort of weird hand sign where you had the two fingers in the middle?
Yeah, it used to be weird. Now we kind of know that that's one of those Jacobian, I think. They're flashing hand. They are always flashing hand signs, gang signs. So this man that helped get the scientific method, right around 1666 in the Satan's loosing in the Gregorian calendar of 1711, he did it. Hung out, studied in Germany, theology, hung out with all the wrong people, doing spying and stuff. And of course, once he was there, he started, being correspondence with other people that were intelligencers sharing information with Baruch Spinoza. And in our world, we only know him as Spinoza, the Portuguese Jewish Jesuit who got kicked out of the Jewish committee for being such a dedicated, bloodthirsty Jesuit. That Spinoza, who is all of the into the, they love him, and the Freemasons and the Aleister Crowley. It's these people. They did it. They were the intelligencers. This guy did it and brought it to the modern world with the peer review, calling himself an investigative journalist. And when Woodrow Wilson founded a propaganda organization called the Committee on Public Information during World War I, they kept it a secret, but they put this guy in charge. Krill. George Krill. You know what you put your fish in when you're fly fishing? That it's called a krill. Yeah. He had a passion. His alcoholic father did not leave a deep as impression as his mother, who inspired his passion for women's suffrage. Yeah. There you go.
Wanted to see justice, huh?
Right. And the peer reviewing and everything else was really enforced after World War II, and the guy in charge was, who was it? Who was Ghislaine Maxwell's dad? Robert Maxwell? Yeah, that guy who everybody loved until he died, and then they found out he was a pervert and a creep and a CIA or MI6 agent. Yeah, thanks everyone. But at least they still have his newspapers up and running over there. People need to study this things,
Well, and you need the profits and cash flow to keep coming,
Right. So we are ripping right through these. Don't have time to go into them a lot as I want. So here's that propaganda fide that, they're still in existence. They wrote the code long ago.
It's some sort of cardinal, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or more of a robin.
Well, that's the Pope. That's the Pope John Paul II.
Okay.
And this was from
robbing him.
I don't know. It had to be in the 80s or something, right?
May have been, yeah.
So here's that. This is in Venice. They're finding people buried, and they've been touristing over this for 400 years, and these guys are like 3 feet deep, and nobody knew there's people buried there, and there's a whole other church underneath it.
Surprise.
Yeah. He was a little guy, this guy. I found some pictures of him compared, to a guy standing near it, and it could have been a child for all they know. Interesting though, right? I wanted to find out what.
Yeah, it's mostly decomposed. I'm guessing I didn't really identify much
of the remains. Yeah, it looked like mud.
Yeah, but there may have been some parts.
So then I got into the grid plans again. Street names. I guess it looks like I looked up street names because that's what this word meant. And a lot of the fonts that they've left on the roads, they had to kind of replicate, because there's still a lot carved on stones for, 8 miles to Boston and stuff,
Yeah, as evidence.
Yeah, right. So this is a new way that we can track them by fonts in street names and things. So I just, got into that. That led to the commissioner's plan of 1811. This was a whole thing of saying, look, we gotta get our towns more organized, man. Around, I'm thinking 100 years after, so. If anybody, I'm not saying we're doing the heavy lifting, but we don't have time. We're doing a lot of Bible study. But if anybody wants to get a few hits, you can talk about the commissioner's plan of 1811 and just throw all kinds of mystery into it, because there's really relatively few of them. We've all seen this picture with the Star Fort still in New York down at the, and like, oh, what happened? And is that really where they built the Twin Towers? Isn't Central Park amazing? Grid lines, you can study them by that. And then they'll give, the credit to, white people in shaded pictures. Look at that aqueduct and stonework behind that when they want you to, I guess, focus on this tree. It's part of Central Park. You can imagine what it was like. There's that survey bolt in an obscure place in Central Park. Boss Tweed, he was the head of the mafia and controlled the politics. And the organization that he worked for was called Tammany Hall, and they were founded in, the 1770s. Central Park, grid lines, how to form a city. And doggone, if they're not the same ones in the United States as if, you took the time, they're all over the world. Grid lines, grid plans. They go back to where, we see grid plans going like, hey, let's build this star fort like that. And here's some interesting things with some interesting fonts and whatnot. So grid lines, grid plans, you can track them all. Something happened. Anybody that wants to say, no, nobody can tell us anything, our history is all figured out, they're in on it. Is it that hard to remember 20 different patterns? And, they named them all and go, wow, I've seen it. They had a short time to get this cover up. It wasn't going to last, but it was always going to be a narrow road. Who in Africa, unless they were building on another grid, would leave this big, in between the streets? Come on. I'm going to get them all in here. Centrifugation, also known as the Roman grid. So if they're not going to be in the reset grid, we're going to look at the old grids, the Roman grids, the Etruscan grids, by studying the landscape history and realizing that they used a process called centuriation. And we can track it. It's a little bit different. They say it's like that, but who knows if it was old world, what? But we do know they're lying, and now there's a new word, centruation, agroma. So they say that the only thing that survived from the Romans is agroma. This is a reproduction that doesn't work because this would be too heavy, but they figured that out too late. But the bottom part is right. So they say, didn't know about this as being a surveying tool until, they're saying that this is how they've done it. And this is the only one, the instruments that of how they did it so precise. They call it a groma. They also have a dioptra, I guess, which is another one from the Greeks and the Etruscans and the other ones. And they're saying that they could do with this what I did with this when I was a surveyor in the military. No, you can't. No, you can't. Because
the optics look a little different.
Yeah. And the idea is that going back to the groma for a second, why didn't it work? Well, you could only get it so close. Now, where is their best way of doing it? The alignment of the plumb lines acceptable to wind for the groma of how they laid out all these wonderful cities. This compares unfavorably with the dioptra, which I am mocking compared to the modern theodolite. Also, the far plumb line on the cross is optically thinner than the closer one. So even if you used the Groma, that's the one we're talking about, the older Roman one, this compares to introducing an angle area that is calculated by the archaeologist to be 1.5 promile. And in parentheses, it says that error is going to be about 1 meter for 710 meters. So how, using a Groma, RJ, this is not a trick question. And they didn't even have this. How could they do this? The tunnel of Ippolinos. It's a tunnel over a mile long, running the length through Mount Castro, and it was built in the 6th century BC to carry water, so it had to be level.
Well, or a little bit of grade, otherwise it's like a canal where there shouldn't be any current. But if it's on grade, the water's going to naturally, flow downhill, whatever that grade is. It might need a couple inches before it's going to seek, the movement that would be natural because of, the elevation different, but it's going to be minimal.
See what we got going here of the design? They say they started digging at 2 separate sides and met in the middle, and they were only off by centimeters. I don't believe them.
Well,
I don't believe them at all.
So they were lucky?
No, they actually say they just go crazy with, they say that, it had 2 openings and it was the first with geometry-based approach, and, they just come up with all kinds of excuses, and a bunch of probablys, and they think that they actually set up a string around it and said, oh, okay, now we know we've kept this string level. You start digging here at this exact point. Wow.
It sounds suspicious.
Yes, it was described by Herodotus in his, ancient book. And he says, I have dwelt longer upon the history of the Samians than I should otherwise have done, because they are responsible for 3 of the greatest building and engineering feats in the Greek world. The first is a tunnel nearly a mile long, 8 feet wide, 8 feet high, driven clean through the base of a hill 900 feet high. The whole length of it carries a second cutting 30 feet deep and 3 broad, along which water from an abundant source is led through pipes into the town. And it was the work of a Megarian named Epallanius. So, way to go.
So do they elaborate on how long such a project took? They must know when they began it and when they finished.
They didn't even know where it was until they read this guy's book, and they said, well, if that tunnel really exists, we should go look for it. And then they found it.
But it's no longer being used. It
says the scholars began researching for the tunnel in the 1800s, inspired by that reference to it from Herodotus. And then they went looking for it because it's like, hey, in 1853 they found it. Yay! Way to go, you guys! Cool, man.
At least someone didn't fill it back in.
Yeah, this is just a little ways from it. There's something going on with this place, and it's like you could throw a couple of rocks, and it's right by that other tunnel. Something's going on here, and I just thought that boulder was particularly weird looking. But this is right near it. It's on that island, it's like that whole Malta and Pathos and the the Isle of Rhodes, the medieval city of roads, like Cecil Rhodes. You just have to keep popping it up, and these star fort cities everywhere. And they don't want us to believe that there's the hidden timelines in something. Think that's crazy? Look at the fortifications on Malta. What? It was it's the same Earth, but as they say, kind of like a different world, man. Because I don't
Yeah,
care what those people say, we can't build this stuff.
well, who got the construction contract for doing that?
I don't know. I would have liked to had the catering contract. Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Yeah, supply that much eatery.
Yeah. You want a burrito for $3? I got all you want. I can't figure out this picture, Randy. What the world is going on here, man? So,
And at what vantage point? Considerably lower. It appears to be.
yeah. So this is the Paul landed on the island of Malta, and he met what they call some very friendly people, that fell in love with him. This is a Bible mentioned town, everyone. Cool, huh?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. What's this?
Yeah, without some sort of it's difficult to imagine the scale. With some
this
of
is another town on
photographs.
Malta there. This is another town on Malta.
But, yeah.
It's pretty cool too.
Yeah,
it's the cultural property, the inventory of this media about Malta. It's 00003. They're all, these are kind of weird when they reuse these rocks and it has the Latin writing on it. How much older is this? Because dang, that font looks kind of familiar to me, man. What the heck? Didn't we look at that earlier or something very similar?
Yeah, and how is that not each one individually, either chiseled in or however the technique was? I can't believe it was printed. Well, that it looks relatively consistent.
Very level, I think, Yeah, I prefer using a karate chop when I do that type of calligraphy. Hey, that looks weird.
Or compared to however the finger of God on the text of the tablets that Moses carried down and then had to replace with a second set.
Well, that would have been no fun to walk back to. Hey, our camp is under attack. Well, Joshua, bless your heart. That's not the sound of an uproar. Kind of cool. I got this Gaza aqueduct. I just pulled that up. That's another big town in Malta. We don't know exactly where Paul landed, the apostle, but this marks that there's they have an aqueduct.
Amazing undertakings that they were able, to complete, with just amazing accuracy.
Right. This obelisk was made to be like, see this over here? Hey, there's water underneath there, and we're commemorating it because I thought I'd get to see, because this is one of those UNESCO World Heritage sites. So they're like, cool, I'll look at oh, never mind. There's nothing about it. They only given up so much. And
Oh, there's something to see here. Just there isn't anything to talk about.
right. And is anybody else bothered by the new YouTube feature of where, when you click off of a video, it'll play even if you don't want to hear it no more. Well, YouTube has got this new queue, and people don't like it, and well, how do you clear your YouTube thing? And because it's running in the background, it's all messed up. You and I both showed each other how YouTube's messing with us. How do I delete my entire queue? Well, you don't you deal with it. Just deal with it, because if anybody's tried to get rid of it, it's me. I wonder what my algorithm will show. Oh, Static in the Attic put out some more nonsense. He's just out of his mind. Last is the bricks from Lynn. He's back in the mix, and he found some new bricks. Randy, we did that in less than an hour and 15 minutes. It looks like pretty good timing on that one. So I'm going to get ready.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't able to make myself available, but like I say, you weren't coming up on my algorithm, and
yeah, that was kind of
reason.
It was, let's see, the title was kind of brought up by a comment that this guy here.
AD?
Yeah, brother, maybe before you go around devouring the brethren like a ravenous wolf in wolf's clothing and making false accusations that Paul is anti-Christian or anti-Paul, maybe listen to the words he's saying on an actual study on Paul's letter. He talks about falling in love with Paul's letter. I see you talking smack all the time, like somehow you alone have deciphered the most under-researched topic in all of Christendom. Have some damn humility before Yah gives it to you. And then this guy said, I haven't proven anything. So I made a reply and I said, this will come back on you, because you know what? They don't scare me. Nobody does. And if they go back and look at that video, I didn't say that Joel was the one anti-Paul. I was talking about Paul from Understanding Impure is anti-Paul. But I did say that a lot of people on his website, they are all into, hi, Shabbat Shalom, happy Sabbath, and there was a lot of that going on. And that's not, and eventually that to me is like, okay, I find it insulting, but that's not a big deal. Everybody's going to,
Well, yeah, you're I guess, recognizing whatever calendar we're probably all sharing, but that doesn't mean that we know what day of the week it is or what year or anything in the timeline, but for what it's worth,
right. So again, finishing up now with 8 people, other people that aren't going to be the importance is that you hit your knees believing in your heart that Jesus Christ is God and he rose from the dead, and you have to confess with your mouth, believe in your heart, do the best you can to serve him the rest of your life. That's what I'm teaching. All of this other, hey, we got some juicy info about maybe they lied and we can prove that you're a liar. We have the Bible. We have 66 books. We have a road and a God that says, hey, there's going to be some suffering, but it's going to be worth it. This earth is not your home. And if you teach that, you'll be mocked and despised. Okay. But we'll do it. Any final words, brother, before we get on with our day?
Well, I had some stuff that I wrote down that I probably should share with you maybe at another time. But
yeah, okay. Well, stick around. I want to hear it because
like I said, I have a few minutes. But
do you want to talk about it?
Well, we can. If you want to close the show, then I'll
okay.
Just give you something to ponder on.
All right. Well, I think this is a good stopping time, an hour and 15 minutes. I want to thank everyone, especially you people that do stick around. You're the salt of the earth, and you have a lot of responsibility too going forward, because we can't deny what we know and how long we've been talking about it, while other people come in and go, "You've been a doodah, all 40,000 subscribers want to know all about the millennial reign. Tell me." And they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't even know what preterism or, they don't know the history of it. And that shouldn't bother me. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a flat earth nation. The golden age has passed. We told you first, we did the heavy lifting. And now we're telling you MudFlood was Armageddon. We're never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We've been called to tell you exactly that. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.